Christine, great to have you here. I've actually been following your journey and also heard great things about you from a couple of folks at Udemy, actually. So good to have you in the podcast. Would you mind just sharing what Wrike does for the audience members? Obviously, you're the CMO, and I'm sure everybody knows that. But would love to just give the audience what Wrike does, and we can go into the discussion.
Sure. Yes, Wrike is a collaborative work management platform. So if you think about the work that we do, we help companies to really manage and improve their workflows. We're a pretty horizontal solution, so we can help with a lot of different types of work, whether you're a marketing team who's trying to figure out how you run campaigns, or you're a product team who's trying to figure out how you launch new products. So it's pretty exciting to be part of an organization that can help so many different types of companies, so many different types of users.
That's awesome. I saw that the annual conference is coming along, right, Christine? That
Yes.
Collaborate event. I was going to show you one. I don't know if I can. I'll probably show it later. But I saw a CMO from Recorded Future post about this in his LinkedIn. Let me actually quickly share it. I don't know if this is what the emotion you have. Okay, here is my annual post about the life cycle of running a customer conference. Conferences are great. Let's do one. Wow, this is a lot of work. I'll never do another conference. Hey, actually, people came to a conference. Let's do more conferences, right? So I don't know if that's the emotion, sort of your feeling in general about conferences, but I just thought it's like a nice little thing that you're stepping in as soon as you sort of came to the role, right?
Yes, yeah, it's definitely exciting. I mean, I think any big customer conference is a lot of work,
Right.
But in the end, it's so satisfying to see all that come together, to be able to hear from customers, to be able to also provide them value. Ideally, we're having them take their time to join us, and they're walking away with information they can apply to their current roles.
That's awesome. One sort of actually couple of follow-up questions. When do you think a company should plan a customer conference? So, like, what stage should the company be in that they should think about, like, okay, let's really put together a conference and invite all our customers and have a sort of an event?
Yeah, I really think I think it's all about what the type and scale of conference is, because you can have a small company, and you can have a more intimate gathering, and you actually have an opportunity to really hear some feedback early on that might help you develop product, develop your customer experience. And then I think as you start to grow and get bigger, obviously it can turn into something that's more complex and reaches more people. But I think you do have to look at, what's the experience you want to give the audience, and what is the benefit for the company, because that there is that exchange of we're giving our customers a benefit, we're getting something back in return. I think no matter what, you've got to figure out how you make it delightful for customers, it's a good use of their time, and that you're able to sort of highlight their success and give them something that they can use.
That's a great point. And when you sort of saw the team planning for the conference, right? Like, did you have any principles or guidance to the team in terms of like, hey, here is what I would love to see, like any vision that you had for the conference? I would love to hear about it, since I'm sure you thought about it a lot deeply.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it is the biggest piece is to think through how we're highlighting our customers' success.
Right.
I think you want to turn your customers into heroes. You want to be able to show all the great things that they're able to do. And so as we were thinking about our customer conference, and it is virtual this year, how is it that we can kind of bring their stories in? How can we have these conversations and connections between Wrike team members, between customers, so that we're able to, you're not just hearing from Wrike the whole time, but you're actually hearing all these different points of views and perspectives.
That's a great point. And I think you guys are planning for a customer awards program as well. I remember seeing on LinkedIn quite a bit. Can you sort of talk us through what makes a great customer awards event, and how should companies think about like executing that even at a tactical level?
Sure. So we actually just launched it this year, first time that we've done it here at Wrike, which is exciting to be part of that. And I think, the key is thinking about how do you want to recognize customers? So what are those awards all about?
Right.
And so what are the things that you want to sort of be able to connect back to your product, be able to connect back to the value that you want to provide a customer? There are a ton of little details that you need to figure out: how many customers, how you're going to sort of determine how you recognize them, and then really thinking about how do you communicate this to your customers so that they're submitting their self-nominations, they're thinking about what they might want to be recognized for, and then certainly thinking about how do we then promote those winners and make sure that we are able to share the great work that they're doing. Really, it's a win-win for us because we get to highlight the great work, and our customers get that recognition, and the individuals who are doing the work day in and day out get some of that recognition.
That's a great point, Christian. And one thing I personally love about these customer awards events is that it's a great way, to your point, to recognize customers, but also like you get so much social proof, right, from a brand perspective that, hey, you know what, hey, Walmart is using Wrike, right? Hey, we should also think about sort of looking at what they're doing, right? That's like the kind of mental perception that forms in social everywhere. It just makes it so exciting as for anybody to do it. So actually, very glad that you're doing it for the first time this year.
Yes, yeah, it's fun to be part of that.
That's awesome. And one sort of category level question I had, Christine, which I'm sure a lot of SaaS companies are navigating right now, because every category has like few players in the ecosystem that they're trying to figure out how do you stand out and differentiate.
Mm-hmm.
And project management, work collaboration is a very, very exciting, bigger category, but also has like a few more players in the market. How do you think about sort of differentiation and standing out from a company standpoint? But also, I would love to hear your guidance in general for companies as well who are trying to sort of figure that out for themselves.
Sure. I think, ultimately you have to figure out what is that unique value that you provide, and how do you make sure that you're focusing all of your teams on that unique value. We're a horizontal solution, so we could help with a lot of different areas, but where are the ones that we provide the most value, we've seen customers drive the most success. And so thinking about how you get really focused and targeted, I think that is sort of the key in all of this. Is you could go broad and be everything to everyone, but how do you actually sort of take that stand and say, this is why Wrike, this is why our brand is what you should consider versus other brands.
And on that point, are there any particular verticals that to your point, right? Like, hey, look, we will go so deep into those verticals that we think Wrike is the best platform. Do you have like a vertical specific marketing strategy that works in Wrike?
We do. So if you think about verticals, and especially those where we've recently launched new solutions and campaigns, two that stand out: manufacturing, if you think about product lifecycle management, professional services as well, if you think about all the client services delivery that needs to be done. So those are two verticals where we've seen success. We think we have a unique story to tell. And then, we also have this pivot of, there are marketing agencies and marketing specific companies where we can do a lot of work. We can also help within any vertical, those marketing departments. So it is sort of that trade-off of, the vertical specific story you want to tell and target. And then within those verticals, where within that company can you provide the most value?
That's helpful. And one question that even selfishly that I would love to hear your thoughts is, when a lot of companies in general start out selling to other tech companies, right, in the valley and stuff, and they go a particular scale. Then after that, they figure out, how do I expand into like other markets because my TAM is sort of tapping out, right? For companies in that stage, Christine, what would your guidance be in terms of how do you figure that out? Like, do you have to hire a team first to go after different verticals? Or should it be a product marketing person? Like, what should the first few steps look like to get some early wins in a vertical and start scaling it?
Sure. So I've definitely seen a few different flavors or iterations of this at various companies. And I think there are, two ends of the spectrum. One is you go really deep, you build tailored solutions, specific products for a vertical, or you sort of approach it in a lighter way. You think about, well, how do I position and message the value that we can provide for that specific vertical? And I think, starting out, you probably want to start on the lighter side of that and think about, do we have some internal expertise already, because we've got team members who've worked with a lot of customers in this vertical, and they can share that information. I think eventually, as you evolve and think about going deeper, you do need to hire those vertical specific experts, whether they're product marketers, product managers, solution consultants, even sales and customer success teams to think about going deep into those verticals. But I do think there is a spectrum, and you can kind of put your toe in the water and test and try that thin layer or that lighter way to message to a vertical. And then I think you can start to think about, okay, how do I go deeper? I think consistent across all those different options, you really have to make sure you are understanding that vertical, the unique careabouts, the unique use cases or workflows, so that you can speak in their language and help them feel like, oh, you understand me. You're talking in a way that resonates with me and resonates with others in my industry.
And then let's say once the messaging is somewhat clear, right? Then you start sort of putting some more energy into your go-to-market, like going into events, right? Figuring out an outbound strategy and start seeing some reception.
Yeah. Yes. I think, once you've got that message, now you have to find out, where do these people go for information? Where are they already going for information? Like you said, industry events. It could be publications that they work with, that they're reading. Could be partners that they're working with as well. I think partnerships are an interesting strategy to think about how you get more tailored solutions for a vertical, because you integrate with or work with a partner that already has a presence in that industry.
That's a great point, Christine. Actually, that is something I missed, thinking about partnerships, right? I think there is a lot of value you can get if the other partner is in a different vertical you are not. If they are offering to do a partner event, that's a great win, right, for you as a company. That's a fair point. And one experience that you have across all your companies is like expanding globally, right, across different companies. Again, is there like a stage in which companies should think about, like, hey, let's expand globally and have local presence? And how should the flavor look like? Is it like central teams with some local presence, or is it like completely locally run teams? How does the typical structure look like as well?
It's interesting, because I worked at some small companies that you would be surprised they had a global presence, and I worked at some huge ones that maybe aren't as mature. But I think the key is, you can be opportunistic early on and sort of say, hey, I'm seeing some demand, I'm seeing some interest. I think it's better to have a proactive approach and kind of figure out, okay, where do we want to focus? Do you want to pilot in a couple of big markets? Do you want to test out in markets that speak the same language as your initial customer base or the home country? I think the key is making sure you're focusing the resources and saying, where do we want to place our bets, and make sure that we have integrated efforts across marketing, sales, product, even any unique considerations around legal or finance. I think there's a lot of complexity, and so making sure everybody's on the same page in terms of what do we need to be successful to find and service and make customers successful in a different country is key.
And you mentioned an important point there, like piloting something. If at all you're going with a proactive approach, what is a pilot, like a crawl, walk, run strategy look like in that case, Christine? Let's say if a company wants to expand into Europe, right? They hire someone locally in Europe, or should they think about a central team in the US trying to dip their waters in Europe? Like, what should the ideal sort of first few steps look like?
I think, one of the probably easiest and quickest ways is to find local partners, resellers who can sort of represent you. They already have a brand, they already know the market, they can help you sort of identify how to go about this. I do think at some stage you want to think about who do you need to have in country, who are those customer facing teams that need to be on the ground in the same time zone, understand local culture, speak the same language, to have those conversations, to make sure once you've acquired a customer that they're successful. I do think sort of from an organizational evolution perspective, there's always the org structure discussion, and I find it changes, probably every 6 months at a fast growing company in terms of, well, what should the org structure look like to go into Europe or to go into Asia, and sort of that balance of, what does a global team do, and then what do you need to have a local team really focus on, because they need to understand how to go to market in that particular country or region.
That's helpful. And if I may ask, Christine, how does it work at Wrike right now at a high level? If you can sort of share what you have sort of instituted, that'll be great to hear.
Sure. So we have, in terms of the marketing organization, we have global and we have sort of regional resources. So if you think about our global resources, those centralized functions, creative design, content marketing, communications, product marketing, performance, digital, sort of all of those teams that can create things that are programmatic.
Right.
That our regional teams who are focused on specific countries or regions can sort of take and customize and run with. We do still run a lot of programs and initiatives globally. For example, we've got one team that's putting out press releases. We have one team that is creating our product marketing strategy. Now, on product marketing, we've actually started hiring people in the regions to help make sure that we are creating that strategy, the messaging, the focus that resonates with some of our bigger markets. But then we also have regional marketers who are sort of the experts in, say, Japan, or the experts in the DACH region, who can say, all right, global team, I know you want to run this globally. That is not going to work in the region. Don't run it. I'm going to run something different. So I think it's that constant communication between those teams to make sure whatever someone sees in a country or region, it feels, number one, authentic to the brand, but then also it feels like it's going to resonate. It's something that, would work in that particular market.
I love that. It feels like there is a evolution that happens as the company matures, right? You start with a global team and probably hire a few field marketing resources regionally to execute the campaigns. But once you start growing the customer base, then you have more budget to sort of hire more product marketing folks, right? And things like that locally in the region, so that it just makes sense for customers. It's a smart way to put it.
Yeah. I mean, I've worked for some really large companies that have, fully built out marketing teams in big geographies, because we have the customer base, we've got, the budget and the resources to sort of support that. But I think there always has to be that balance of the global brand with the local, sort of feel and culture.
That makes a lot of sense. And I saw that you obviously led the B2B marketing team at Udemy, right? And Udemy, it's always so fascinating, because I thought of Udemy as like a B2C kind of business, but I didn't realize how big of a share that B2B has with Udemy, right? I just curious to understand from you, Christine, like, was there like any discussions and positioning inside the company, like, hey, are we a B2C, B2B company, but still the B2B is a larger presence? Like, how did marketing sort of navigate that sort of challenge in general?
Sure. So when I joined Udemy, we had two separate marketing teams. So I think one of the keys early on to Udemy being able to sort of make that, I won't say pivot, because the consumer business was still very important. But in order to sort of build out and say, what does a B2B function look like at this company, was that we operated as a separate business unit for a really long time. So we had sort of a leadership team that was B2B specific.
Right.
And I had peers on the consumer side of the business that we collaborated with. We had some shared services from a marketing perspective in terms of design and communications, where we said, hey, that's something that the consumer team and
Right.
the B2B teams can sort of tap into. And again, it helps make sure that you drive that global consistency, because ultimately you are one company. You might interact with us as a consumer, or you might interact with us as a business buyer or a business user, but that consistency is key. And I think that, we were able to sort of navigate and try different go-to-market motions. We had, in some cases, different functions on the B2B side than you would on consumer, because you're not necessarily working with a sales organization thinking about how do you drive campaigns that drive leads for sales. So I think that's, that is something that was definitely key to driving that success. I have seen companies that also have a single marketing team that is covering both sides of the business. That's where Udemy ended up in terms of having a single marketing team, but ultimately you still want to have functions or teams that are sort of on the hook for driving the right metrics for those businesses.
And it's like a hybrid motion, right? Where folks can sign up for their own courses, but the sales team can also start sort of going top down and explaining the value prop and trying to expand the number of users within a business. It's right. Yeah.
Yes. I think that's one of the fascinating things about companies that have this model is, you and I are business people. We have budget and authority to buy technology, but we're also individuals. And so we might first engage with a brand on the consumer side and buy a single course. But then you have that brand awareness in your mind, and then you get sort of this exposure or this introduction to the brand as a B2B tool. And you think, well, I had a great experience from a consumer. Let me see what we can do on the business side. So it's a really unique sort of opportunity to be in as a marketer too, to think about balancing those experiences, leveraging all the best things of the consumer side that you can apply to B2B.
It's a great point, Christine. Yeah, and to your point, that's actually true. Like, like there is some sort of, I would say, viral effect to it, right? Like, for example, I as a consumer can go sign up, and then I go to a different company, let's say a couple of years down the line, I'd be like, hey, you know what? I remember doing this at Udemy. Let's try to bring them in, right? There is like some level of interesting loop there that's just fascinating.
Yes, definitely.
Cool. And I think one topic that you were saying that you're very passionate about is running integrated marketing teams, right? And making sure that everything is so integrated. Like, I would love to sort of hear your thoughts on like any operating principles or rhythms that like you have instituted in your sort of org that just makes everybody function in an integrated fashion. Is it like a weekly rhythm, weekly leadership meeting, like monthly all hands marketing team? Like, what are those certain sort of processes that you follow that does make more efficient in terms of working? Yeah.
Sure. And I love stepping into these situations, because what you sort of discover is everybody's they're doing what they think is the right thing for the customer, for the company. And with some changes to how you operate, you can get so much more out of all those efforts, because you're thinking about it from an integrated perspective. And I think at first, even before sort of the regular operating cadences, I think it starts with making sure everybody has a consistent view of what are our common goals and metrics. What are we trying to drive? What are our priorities? How do we think about the work that will support those? So we use OKRs to drive that alignment and make sure we all sort of understand the guiding light, as well as driving that accountability. And I think another key piece of this is building out those priorities and really the top level plan as a team. Now, not the entire team, but when I joined, I brought my leaders together and said, hey, we need a single marketing strategy. I want your best ideas, I want your expertise, and let's build it together. So then we're all aligned to it, we're all bought into it. We're going to take our teams along in terms of this transition from potentially operating in silos to thinking about an integrated way of working. And then if you think about that operating cadence, I have weekly staff meetings with my leads where we talk about key projects, our top priorities, the metrics we're tracking, any updates across the team. I have one-on-ones with each of my leads to kind of go deeper into things. And then we have a regular all hands for the marketing organization where we make sure that we're sort of reinforcing those OKRs, those values, those key initiatives, those top priorities, and highlighting work across the team in terms of what's contributing to those efforts. So I think the communication is definitely key. And there are some frameworks that you can use in terms of making sure you're laddering up efforts to those OKRs or whatever your operating principle is at a company in terms of how you focus and prioritize work.
Very, very helpful, Christine. So I have a few follow-up questions there. So these quarterly goals and these goals and OKRs, are they set like every quarter, or do you set up like on an annual basis and then don't revise it? Like how does the process work?
So we we have company level OKRs, and we set a goal for the year, and then we check in. We report out more broadly on a quarterly basis, but we actually check in monthly on sort of status and any place where we need to put additional effort. From a marketing team perspective, when I came in, because we were almost halfway through the year, we said, hey, we're gonna set our OKRs for the second half of the year. We're going to align to the company OKRs and look at how marketing can drive those. And then similarly, let's check in and see how we're progressing. I have been at companies that set different KRs at the quarterly or even the half level.
Right.
I think the key is the objective, like that big thing you're trying to do, that needs to be year long. Otherwise, you feel like you're sort of always in this whiplash motion of moving to a different objective. So I do think changing the KRs maybe on a more frequent basis is good, especially if you say, this is actually something I can accomplish within a quarter. Then I need another key result to drive forward to make sure I'm delivering on that objective.
That's helpful. And then in the marketing all hands you mentioned, right? Does just mentally thinking through what a good agenda could look like, right? Like so the individual functional leaders come in and present their OKRs and the plan to achieve the upcoming ones, or do you have a different format that you sort of have found that is more productive?
We have a few standard agenda topics that we include. So I will normally kick it off and sort of talk about anything that's top of mind for me, anything I want to make sure the team is focused on or needs to be aware of. And then we go into our values, so our company values, and we try to highlight a team or an individual or a project that exhibits and really, personifies those values. So we're constantly reinforcing that. And then another sort of consistent agenda item is key metrics. And we try to bubble up at the top level, how is marketing contributing to driving growth? So not a ton of detail, but from a high level, looking at, pipeline, looking at influence, how are we helping to drive the company? And then we introduce new people, we highlight any awards, any promotions. And then we'll normally get into, what's the meat of the agenda? Do we need to give an update on our big customer event that's coming? Has there been, a change in terms of our product roadmap that we need to make sure everybody's aware of? So we've got those ongoing agenda items, and then try to leave time for big discussion topics.
This is so cool. I love that there is a clear sort of agenda in place, and I love all the items that you mentioned. One last question on this, Christine. Who helps you own the agenda? Is it the marketing operations team that helps you typically, like, hey, like, here is what the structure should look like, here is the metrics, I'm gonna have the team members get in, or do you have a chief of staff who does that, or is it you who like puts your mind together and puts your agenda together? Like, how does it all come together
It is definitely my leadership team and myself. So our head of corporate comms normally keeps us on track and makes sure that we are realizing there's a date coming up that we need to be aware of. But the leadership team really comes together and says, okay, what are we going to talk about? What's the most important thing? And then everybody plays their part in terms of, hey, I have a new team member joining. I'm going to create that slide, and I'm going to talk to their background. Or our marketing operations team will do the updates, and they're the ones that are going to cover where we are in terms of progressing towards our targets.
That's very helpful. No, the reason why I asked so many questions is because it's in remote settings, it's so important to get all these things right. So that means it's a lot more like unify towards like what they're trying to accomplish. That's why I was trying to understand the best practices from you in terms of what you all do at Wrike. So it's a very helpful thing. Cool. My last question, Christine. I've peppered you with a lot of questions, but what would your guidance be for folks who sort of aspire to become CMO someday? Especially folks who are in the middle management and marketing teams who are listening would be helpful.
Right. So I think breadth of experience is really key. You don't have to be an expert in every marketing discipline, and any company that expects you to be an expert has unrealistic aspirations, I think. We all sort of have the areas where we grew up in marketing and where we have that deep subject matter expertise. But you need to understand at a high level, how do the different disciplines work together? What are the most important things? If you need to hire a head of product marketing or a head of performance, what are the most important skills and traits that they need to have? And I think it's also important to understand all those pieces, because as we discussed, we can't operate in silos. We have to be able to guide the teams on where they can work together. I think you can get that experience by making some different lateral moves and testing out a couple of marketing disciplines. Or I think you can also look at how do you identify those cross-functional projects where you can get more experience in areas where you may not have that direct expertise. And you get a chance to see, okay, how does brand work? Or you get to see, hey, what are the questions that product marketing is going to ask? I think you learn a lot that way. And I think you also can learn a lot through mentors. So if there's, an area where you're trying to get some more expertise, can you find a mentor in that area? Can you even do informational interviews with your peers to really understand what's your day-to-day like? What are the things you care about? So I think those are some keys in terms of getting that breadth of experience. I think you also have to be really comfortable with cross-functional collaboration. That's one of the things I love about my job is, I can go from talking to our product teams about roadmap to talking to sales about pipeline, to talking to finance about ROI. And you may be the marketing expert on the executive team, but you have to understand business in general and be able to have those variety of conversations. So I think just a general business knowledge is also important.
Very, very helpful. Like I think a lot of people that I speak to, especially share the second point that you mentioned. It's like it just prepares you to be like a GM of the business, right? Because you have to talk to so many people and figure out what's the right way to run it, like a company. So that's like a point that I've heard from multiple people. So great that you highlighted that. But Christine, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for doing this. I've peppered you with a lot of questions, but you've been patient enough to answer a lot of questions. So thank you for doing this. We really appreciate your time today.
Of course. Great chatting with you.
Awesome.